Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me tonight on the Zoom In with Daniel Root for October, what is today, the 8th of 2024. And this is the 6:30 p.m. Central Time. I'm in the Pacific time, just so you know. Anyway, I've got a few people here, and I know Julie has a question that actually I'm set up to answer for you, Julie. Shall I?
Yay.
Shall I go ahead and just throw your question that was actually posted to the group up on the screen? So thank you for asking this question. It's a very important thing to make sure people are very clear on. The type of oils that are considered seed oils are controversial. And so I'm going to go ahead and click through. And basically, this controversy does center around the canola, corn, and soybean oils, which do go through a lot of processing and typically using things like hexane. They're going to cause the trans fats and rancid oils. So these definitely differ from the cold pressed unrefined oils, and you'll see that that's all we're using on the protocol. So they're extracted without any of the processing that goes into true seed oils. Even though things like flaxseed have the word seed in them, they're not considered seed oils. Right here, I want to read this real quick. Cold pressed oils, unlike highly processed oils, retain antioxidants, vitamins, and polyphenols that promote overall health. Essentially, extra virgin olive oil is a different type of oil than the others because we use a lot of polyunsaturated oils, and this one happens to be a monounsaturated fat. It's a very important one. It's got the anti-inflammatory capabilities as well as protecting against oxidative stress. So this is one of 3 oils that are blended in our kit. So we do have a supply kit that has a blend, and it's a beautiful blend of essential fatty acids in the 3, 6, and 9. So the next one is the flaxseed. So this one is omega-3 fatty acids. And you can see it says here, flax oil supports heart health and helps reduce inflammation and making it ideal oil for our protocol. And then, so walnut oil contains a good balance of omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, which are essential for the health. And by the way, it's also an anti-inflammatory. There's another point I want to make while we're here about this. So I'm going to stop screen sharing since the slides no longer up there. But the important thing that people need to realize is that for the most part, maybe the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio has been correct, where 3s are higher than 6s. However, you'll find on our protocol, we need to support the cellular health, the membranes, especially of the cells. So what happens is that we actually use more omega-6 essential fatty acids than 3s. That comes from both the walnut oil as well as the evening primrose oil. So we use those because they're there to support the cell membranes, and actually most of the body organs need to have omega-6s. I would actually argue that the ratio of 3 to 6 is backwards. And it wouldn't surprise me because most everything else that we're told is health information is usually the exact opposite of what it is actually for real. But that being said, just know that the seed oils that you're concerned with, Julie, are not the ones we're using on the protocol. So there really is no other substitutions, just so you know. But the oils are used for several purposes. And the evening primrose oil, like lecithin, is an emulsifier, which is very important for several reasons. Now, lecithin itself is a primary source of choline, and that's going to be another supporting or cell supporting type of element. But the lecithin as an emulsifier is not just breaking down fats and oils for our bodies to be able to digest them better, but they're also emulsifying lipophilic xenobiotics, or these fat-soluble heavy metals and man-made chemicals, and allowing the body to actually transport those through aqueous media like the interstitial fluids, the eccrine watery sweat, and the urine. So there's a lot of reasons why these things or these elements are included in the protocol. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. It reassures me. I didn't see hexane free or any of them, so I just want to make
because
sure.
the term cold pressed is kind of automatically implying that. But yeah, I do know about the concern with the seed oils. And in fact, I found out about that quite a while ago. And so I did my own discovery on that and confirmed that these oils are all safe. You know, we did not invent the protocol, we just advanced it. So these oils were already used in the original Hubbard method. And I've actually gone through and really not just reverse engineered the protocol, but dug deep into each element to find out what's their purpose. And it is absolutely an amazing protocol. It was put together originally, but it needed some tweaks, like, for example, understanding better the niacin, and then also using the far infrared saunas over the dry saunas and adding the binders. So these were some of the major tweaks. But anyway, I'm glad that answered your questions. I also wanted to talk more a bit about the article. So while people are thinking of questions, let me do another screen share, and let's talk about this particular article that I published. I even mentioned it last week in the Zoom in, but it wasn't completed yet. So this is going back to the topic of saunas and how, you know, the choice of sauna makes all the difference in the detox program. The article covers everything from why the sauna type matters in detoxification, and the type of sweat that we need to produce by these saunas, because not all saunas are created equal. We now know for sure that far infrared saunas are producing the type of sweat that we need, which is the sebaceous sweat. So briefly, for those who don't understand what that really means, there are at least 2 different glands that produce a sweat-like material. There's a third one, but we don't really talk about it much. It's more around the growing. So the eccrine watery sweat gland produces 95 to 97% water, and the remainder tends to be salts. So these sweat glands are producing what amounts to the perspiration that is designed to regulate the body temperature, and that's what sweat is for. Now, most of the toxicants that we are detoxing in our protocol are lipophilic or fat attracted, fat soluble, which means they're also hydrophobic, and they will not normally seek out the eccrine watery sweat to be sweated out. So remember, I just said earlier that the lecithin and the evening primrose oils are emulsifiers, and that's how our protocol is able to leverage the eccrine watery sweat. But with the program, we are trying to achieve a good sebaceous sweat, and that's coming from the sebum produced by the sebaceous oil glands that are attached to every hair follicle. And you've got about 90 of those per square inch on the body, except your hands and feet, by the way. So the sebum in these in this sebaceous oil gland is melted better in a far infrared sauna to produce this sebaceous sweat. Now, the sebum is designed really to keep the hair follicle lubricated and the hair and skin moist on the surface, while providing a protective barrier against bacteria, but not much else. I mean, air pollution gets through there, no problem. Anyway, the sauna that we need for really detoxing the best is the far infrared sauna. Now, full spectrum saunas do work too, because they have the far infrared component, but you really want one that has more of the far infrared panels. So like where they sell these near infrared, you know, systems that say that they're full spectrum, they may have a little bit of far infrared, but they're mostly focused on near infrared. And you know why that matters, by the way, is because, you know, near infrared saunas, they'll tell you penetrate the skin deeper than far infrared, but that doesn't matter because the penetration is not the important thing. Far infrared wavelengths penetrate about 1.5 inches deep, but what they do is they resonate with the water molecules in the cells down to about 1.5 inches. And so the vibrational resonance that's caused by these far infrared wavelengths is what's producing the heat and heating up the sebaceous oil gland so that we produce that sebaceous sweat. So this is why it matters when it comes to saunas. I also talked about how Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt was the reason we were convinced to switch from dry saunas to far infrared. When I mentioned earlier that the eccrine watery sweat is 95 to 97% water, it was from Dr. Klinghardt's study. This was not a published study, by the way. You won't find it online. What it was a presentation he made in 2012, and it's, in fact, I have this written in my book, so you can learn more about this. But bottom line here is that when you get into a far infrared sauna and compare it with a dry sauna in a 1-hour period, what you find is that the sweat from a dry sauna is going to be mostly water. Now, if you do more than an hour and you're doing sauna cycles to heat up and cool down, heat up and cool down, that's pretty much why it takes longer in a dry sauna. But 80 to 85% water is what we get on the far infrared sauna in a 1 hour period. And the remainder is the fat soluble toxins, heavy metals, sulfuric acid, ammonia, uric acid, and I forgot to say cholesterol. So anyway, this is what convinced us to move from the dry saunas to the far infrared. Here's the illustration I was talking about. So if you're using a dry sauna, for example, you can take 5 hours, and this is why the original Hubbard method really took so long. And plus the fact that rebound lipolysis was actually happening in the last 2 hours. And if you don't know what rebound lipolysis is, please watch one of the 2 videos that discuss the science behind detoxination, which you can find on my website. But anyway, so the Hubbard method was really it had 2 issues. The first one being that because these repeated cycles of heating and cooling, heating and cooling, heating and cooling, heating and cooling, you're basically taking longer to get the core temperature up to the point where sebaceous sweat was being produced. And then rebound was occurring in the last 2 hours. So they were getting great results after 5 hours of this protocol, but we realized that with the rebound in humans being these last 2 hours, rather than in sheep, which trigger within 40 to 50 minutes, we found that the far infrared saunas leveraged these last 2 hours and got us to the point where we were getting a much better detox. And then adding the binders made the remainder of your day much better. But anyway, so I also compare formats. So here's an example of a far infrared sauna. Here's an example of a full spectrum. You can see the black panels are in both. Those are the far infrared panels, whereas these front ones here are the full spectrum heaters. And they're independently controlled, and they do put out near, mid, and far infrared wavelengths, but we really need the black panels to get the far infrared sweat, or heat. Here's an example of a barrel style of a dry sauna, and the dry saunas do work, but they do tend to take longer, as you've seen. Here's a Therasage portable sauna, and this is a great example of a portable type sauna that I recommend for this protocol if space or budget are a concern. So this particular manufacturer makes what I consider to be the best portable sauna with the lowest EMFs and lowest VOCs. They unfortunately will off gas in the very beginning, but let them set for about a week or so in the air, and then off gas and be no longer able to be smelled. But you can notice here too that the zippered armholes allow your hands to be either outside or inside. So you're able to towel off regularly, and you're able to consume fluids like water. So this is why, in fact, I don't recommend things like the sauna blankets because it's too difficult to manage doing the toweling off, which needs to happen, by the way, as well as drinking fluids. So they can be used. I know people are using them, but I'm not a big fan of them. In fact, I talk about these particular items, the steam rooms, the ozone pods, and the sauna blankets, and why we just don't think that they're of any value to this protocol. You might find value for other reasons, but not for this protocol. So here I talk about how the body produces the sebaceous sweat with the far infrared sauna based on how the far infrared wavelengths affect the tissues and the water in the cells, like I just mentioned earlier. And then I talk about the importance of actually owning your own sauna versus having to go to a gym or a day spa. It's something that, it's a matter of a lot of different variables. I know, like budget, space, are you in a temporary location or what have you? But just know that most of the sauna spas are not open 7 days a week, and ours is a 30-day program. The other thing too is that gyms tend to usually only have dry saunas, although I've seen some upgrades, but it's mostly the dry saunas. So you're kind of stuck having to do a longer protocol each day. In fact, it goes from 75 total minutes of far infrared sauna versus 90 to 120 minutes, depending in a dry sauna, depending on how long you can actually sit in the dry sauna. So if it's running 180 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit, you probably can only sit in there for 15 to 20 minutes. But if it's running around 160 to 170, perhaps maybe you can then do a lot longer sauna cycle or periods where you're in the sauna, and then less cool down breaks, and that would make 90 minutes acceptable. But 120 is what most people would wind up doing if they have to cool down a lot. Okay, now there's some key considerations that you should know about. Of course, budget is always going to be number one for people. I realize that. Size, now that could be the number of people, but it can also mean the room to be able to recline. So size, as far as the physical properties of it as well can matter. Because you may have limited space. And I actually have in our sauna selector guide a table that shows both the power requirements and the size of each sauna that I recommend. So the sauna selector guide is linked at the bottom of this article. Shape can matter. Rectangles are typical, but you can get corner saunas. So the corner units and the outdoor units are, something that are available. Wood types, especially for people who may have sensitivities to smells. So you might need to consider like something more, like Canadian hemlock or basswood. So the EMF levels, now this used to be a problem in the past when manufacturers weren't really concerned about the power and how much they're putting off in electromagnetic fields or frequencies. And so in the last, now it's been more than 10 years, but we used to say in the last 10 years, the manufacturers have mitigated most of the EMFs, at least the good ones. So the manufacturers I recommend have the lowest EMFs of any saunas. But just know that if you buy a cheap, knockoff sauna, a cheap Chinese sauna, for example, that is meant to look like one of the major brands, there's a Radiant sauna versus Radiant Health sauna. Radiant Health saunas are our favorite sauna, but there's a knockoff from China called Radiant that is playing off that name, and their saunas are frankly junk. But they don't care about things like VOCs, volatile organic compound off-gassing. So they use glues and plywoods and things like that. So you've got to be careful with, not toxing yourself more when you're trying to detox. Quality of materials and workmanship is a big one too. So, the manufacturers, again, I recommend are all good quality and workmanship. And then warranties. So manufacturers I work with pretty much have a lifetime limited warranty, and that's an important thing because it can cover the heater, the whatever called emitters really, and the control panels and things like that. Now, any wear and tear, of course, are not going to be covered, but that's an important factor. So anyway, this is the link to the sauna selector guide. If I click on it and bring that up real quick, this talks a bit more about the infrared wavelengths. Gives a little more detail about why full spectrum has more benefits, but the real detoxing effect occurs in the far infrared. So Clear Light has several different models. Not too far. Clear Light is the Cadillac of the industry. It's well known as that. And that's why Jacuzzi puts their brand on it. But these are the full spectrum saunas, the options you have here. There's a couple of unique ones, like this is also basically that's a hot yoga up here, and this is what's called a retreat sauna, and it actually is wheelchair accessible. So yes, you can actually have a sauna with a wheelchair. The infrared wavelengths will bounce off or reflect off the metal so they don't get hot. Here's the Premier line, which is the far infrared line. And here's some outdoor saunas, and then their curved dome sauna. Now this is an older image, but the new ones are orange, more orange in color. And they now come with a PEMF mat, so pulse and electromagnetic frequency mat, which can help with microcirculation. But if you're EHS or electrohypersensitive, I would not recommend getting something with a PEF mat or using the mat itself. So here's Radiant Health saunas. I consider them the workhorse of the industry. So they are like your Dodge, Chevy, Ford, GMC, whatever your favorite pickup is. The Radiant Health saunas are the workhorse of the industry. At the last center we had open, this is the unit we had. It was a 4-person with benches on both sides. Love that sauna. I liked how the emitters or heaters, as some will call them, are tall enough to go above the head. So it's one of the rare saunas that actually have a high emitter for the top of the head, which is safe, don't worry. Now this is the what I would consider the Kia or Hyundai of the industry. They're great budget saunas. In fact, they've evolved quite a bit, and hence the name Evolve. But they are now some of the lowest EMF saunas. In their earlier models, they were not, but they've improved, and that's why they were called Evolve. But the Sunstream Mini, I've owned two of these. I've got one ready to be put into an apartment that we're going to then be able to treat people. They come out from other countries or other states and visit with me. It's called the Detoxination Retreat with Daniel Root, which you can find on our website under the contact. So that's a whole nother story, but I'm able to work with people using one of these Evolve Minis. So anyway, these are the cabin style saunas that I recommend. And if you'd like to watch me installing or setting up the first Evolve Mini I had, here's a video you can watch. So on that note, I hope that brings up questions, and we'll see if anybody, yeah, go ahead, Julie.
Okay, I've got plenty now. Well, do you find that people, does this lengthy 30-day heat sauna detox trigger herpes outbreaks?
It can. Yeah,
Okay.
okay. So you have to understand a lot of things are toxic related. So, or associated to toxins. And a lot of times these types of effects can flare up because of the toxins being liberated, mobilized, and then trying to come out through the skin. So just know that, and this can get really kind of too technical, and I don't know if I want to go down the path, but just know that the outbreaks that you're seeing are more than likely actually toxins, not herpes virus.
Okay.
So
I have a client, actually a couple that have been intoxicated from leaking breast implants.
okay. Yeah, I've
And
dealt with a lot of BII.
yeah, so will this detox that silicone and those toxins?
Yeah. I've successfully detoxed several people who've presented with those conditions. So yes, and in fact, it's not just the silicon that was leaking out. There are actually other toxic chemicals that were in there that were
Yeah.
also leaking out. It probably could have been the cause of the leaks for all we know.
Right, right. Okay. So how best to address that if they're hyper sensitive to saunas, heat saunas?
This
How do
is
you
one of
gradually?
the sorry, this is one of the other reasons why we switched from dry saunas to the infrared, because the temperature actually is not the important thing about an infrared sauna. It's the emitters being able to actually trigger or to resonate with the water molecules under the skin. So running temperatures around 120 to 140 are pretty average with these kinds of saunas. But because they're infrared saunas and don't rely on convection to heat the air first and then conduction to heat the body, it's perfectly okay to open the door and allow a cold blast of air to come in, so that not only do you or the person get a little chilled down and cooled down a bit, it also forces the emitters to have to turn back on, which is where the benefits of far infrared comes from.
Okay. Okay. And you had answered my question, I think online, that it does help with fatty liver. And
Yes, as a matter of fact, I would argue that the zeolite alone is helping with that, because the zeolite is filtering the bile acids as they're going through enterohepatic recirculation and bringing the unhandled toxicants that the liver was rejecting, essentially because it can't break them down. They're man-made chemicals that it's never dealt with before. So these chemicals and heavy metals that should not be in the body do get rejected by the liver, and they are brought back to the small intestine, ideally to be eliminated through feces. However, most of these man-made chemicals are so lipophilic that they just reabsorb into the tissues before the body can remove them. So this is why the zeolite throughout the day on our protocol is so important. We want to keep the GI tract fully loaded with or coated, if you will, with the zeolite. And I think, frankly, fatty liver is actually somewhat resolved by the zeolite alone.
interesting.
It's a
So another,
hypothesis, but you know.
Yeah, and then for livers that might be compromised from parasitic infections, do you recommend to do parasitic protocols, or can this be done along with parasitic protocols?
Yeah, I
Because
would
I've
I
got,
would work on that first, and just know though that our protocol is very effective at removing food or fuel sources for opportunistic pathogens because most of them are feeding off of heavy metals. So, and they're not removing them from your body. They're just basically redistributing them. They're producing waste. They're
yeah,
dying off after, growing. In fact, the Herxheimer reaction is mostly about, large die-offs. So most people don't even experience Herx reactions on our protocol. However, that term Herx has now expanded to be more broad ranging. So detox manifestations can now technically be termed Herx reactions, but they're mostly die-offs.
yeah, okay. Um, I don't know if I should say the other. So I've been also following, there was a Facebook gentleman who's got a cellular detox protocol going on, but it's really expensive. I mean, it sounds impressive, and they talk about the cell wall, healing up the cell wall.
Hmm.
How how does that, I'm not sure if you know who I'm.
I think I do.
Okay, so that's why I was particularly interested in the purity of the oils and clarity of the oils. But how, and I'm not sure exactly how that protocol works, but that's what I love about this one, is being able to make this affordable and taking it out of the clinics and bringing it into the home is just, I mean,
Thank
brilliant.
you. In fact, my father was against me writing the book, but I explained to him, look, L. Ron Hubbard wrote Clear Body, Clear Mind many years ago, and it became a #1 bestseller. In fact, behind the Bible, it's actually probably the second most sold book. And I think that's because the Scientologists are the ones buying it and giving it away. But, the thing is that it was such a popular book that I know people are out there trying to follow his program. And I've read all different editions of that book, and I can tell you right now, the more editions that come out, the less information's in there, and it becomes really confusing. The original version of the book, it had a lot more pages that explained how to do the protocol better, but because people were doing it, I think they yanked out almost 200 pages of it, and so the books that are sold today as Clear Body, Clear Mind, are so confused about how to do the protocol. And then again, it is the original Hubbard method, which I consider to be an obsolete method anymore. Our protocol has had so many advancements that it produces much better results in much less time. And it actually improves the user experience by adding the binders. So with this protocol, we are supporting the detox organs. We're supporting the cell walls, as you mentioned. And the beauty of it is that, it pretty much came out of the box from L. Ron Hubbard as a very well conceived protocol. In fact, I learned something new practically every other day that blows my mind about how all these different things, these elements interact positively, synergistically together, and yet, they're for multiple reasons. So, like the lecithin, as the biggest example, is an emulsifier for breaking down the oils, and that's what it was originally for. But it's a primary source of choline, and choline is absolutely needed for our cells and other organs. But it's also if you've got under methylation issues for people with the MTHFR gene polymorphisms, the beauty of choline is it is a methyl donor. So where niacin can be considered a methyl group sponge, the flip side is that you have the choline to balance it out. So that's one of the many things that this protocol has had included that are extremely important. The evening primrose oil, I was always believing, was for the fact that lecithin breaks down the oils for the body to digest better. But when some people cannot digest oils, even after the lecithin, then we would bring the evening primrose oil in. That was what we were doing before I learned more about evening primrose oil and how important essential fatty acids, the omega-6s are. So, I love digging into this to find out more and more about it, and then other ways that we can improve it. One of the improvements that are basically considered a biohack, that's not included with the full protocol, although it kind of looks like it is now, is the L-arginine, or arginine, as some people say. That L-arginine reproduces a vasodilation. So where the original Hubbard method would actually have you exercising and getting into the sauna while still flushing, that means that the bloodborne toxicants are being pumped out to the dermal regions where you see the redness. That's something that the flush has always had value for, but by the time you do our protocol, it's 3 hours later. The flush is usually gone by then. So when you're in the sauna, if you have an L-arginine dose, it can cause more vasodilation. Unfortunately, it doesn't trigger a rebound lipolysis, so it's not able to be a substitute for niacin. Sorry, but it is a biohack that for people who cannot exercise, that's a way to do it. You can skip the exercise with the L-arginine if you have to. I don't recommend it. And in fact, I would tell you that L-arginine is not safe to do long term, I've been told. So I'm going to go with that. Never used it. I just, it's one of the suggestions that I've received from people that I took seriously, looked into, and went, wow, that has merit. But unfortunately, we aren't in a place now where I can do controlled studies or anything like that. So I put that out there as a biohack, and that's why it's not included in the full protocol.
Great. So do you recommend glutathione as well?
So there's another brilliant question. I am of the opinion, I'm not a medical doctor. I can tell you this, though, that there are two things that have been instilled into my brain, and that is you don't mess with pH of the body, because different parts of the body have different needs for their pH levels. And if you start altering those, you could really harm yourself. And glutathione, that was the other one. You don't really want to mess with that. And since niacin and the choline from lecithin support glutathione, I don't believe there's a need to actually supplement with it. And I think it's even worse if you use the liposomal form of glutathione, where it gets right into the cells. Those are two things that I've just had instilled into me that are just not things you want to mess with.
That's interesting because that's vitamin C and glutathione, liposomal, is part of Quicksilver's.
I know.
Yeah. So, and I thought that was used for someone with a compromised liver.
Yeah,
But,
their protocol I'm familiar with, but not any kind of expert on it.
yeah. Well, the Quicksilver was not the one I was thinking of before.
I know.
But
I knew.
I mean, and then it was like a 5-month program before you get to clearing the brain. I'm like, well, I want that now. But so I'm looking forward to getting started. So I guess my next step is just ordering the kit from you.
Yeah, in fact, we haven't had a Zoom consultation yet, have we?
No.
Yeah, I do offer a complimentary Zoom consultation, and this is a great time to bring up a problem I'm having. I tried out a new business service called heal.me/detox. And I've been getting reports lately that people are asking where's their link to their Zoom call with me, and I don't have it on my calendar because it never finished getting booked. And I don't know if there's a step that people are missing or if their system is broken and I'm paying too much for it. So these next few days, I will be switching from heal.me to a service that's actually on my own website. So it'll be what's called a plugin, and it will allow my WordPress site to have its own booking system. So I apologize for people who may have thought they have scheduled a time with me, but they are not getting confirmation emails or links to the meetings. And it unfortunately can lead to double booking right now. So this is a great time for me to just say, I'm sorry, people, if you've scheduled a time and it didn't work. I do offer the complimentary consultation, and it's basically for us to get to know each other. Plus, I go through a health history with you. And that also is a link on my website you can fill out ahead of time. So if you want to go ahead and do that, that would help. Just go to the contact menu items and you'll see health history questionnaire down there. Also, that's where the detoxination retreat with Daniel Root can be found. But That's for people
And
who
that link is on your book?
well, it's in getdetoxinated.com. I'll put a link in the video,
Okay.
getdetoxinated.com, and then it's the health history questionnaire link.
Okay.
So that would be helpful for you to fill out before our meeting.
Okay.
And then once we meet, then I'll be able to answer your questions and also make sure the protocol is right for you. And if you have any conditions that require special handling, and this is where my remote coaching really shines, is because after working with this protocol since 1982, we kind of have a good idea of all the different conditions that are out there that are going to need to have certain changes. The best example has always been the gallbladder. Those who've had the gallbladder removed need to not be doing the oils. So some people can, but they
Yeah.
lack the storage of bile acids, so it's not a good idea to supply oils. That's an example. There's many others, and I can certainly tailor the program for conditions that you may have.
So I should wait to order the kit until I talk to you? Is that what you're suggesting?
I would suggest you do that simply because I want to make sure there's no preclusions or contraindications that would mean that we've just wasted money on the kit or sending it back. So yeah, let's
Okay.
meet first. I think
Okay.
we should be able to meet. In fact, if you want to just go ahead and meet through, or excuse me, schedule it through Messenger on Facebook, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Hi, Dan. Yeah, a couple
Hey
of
there.
questions. In terms, you were talking a little bit before about sauna temperature, and certainly obviously the difference between dry and the infrared, but what sort of temperatures are you suggesting people aim for?
Yeah, that's a question that reminds me of one that somebody asked in the Facebook group about what's the optimal dose of niacin for people to get the best results. So there is none for either question. It's whatever the lowest temperature you can tolerate that does produce sebaceous sweat. So that applies to both dry and infrared saunas. Whatever temperature is the most comfortable that you can sit in and still produce a sebaceous sweat. Now, how do you know if you're producing sebaceous sweat, right? So there's a couple of things you can look for. It looks slicker. It looks, and it feels slicker. So it's not just water. But there is a test that I've discovered accidentally where you take a paper towel and use it to wipe down. I usually have one out here. But you wipe down your arms and your face and get the paper towel soaking wet. And then if it dries out overnight and you can drop a little droplet of water on it and see that the droplet sits on top for longer than it should, it doesn't immediately absorb. That's a good way to tell if the towel was covered with lipids that dried out from your sebaceous sweat. So that was an accidental test, and it works pretty well. So if the bead of sweat, gets drawn in, or excuse me, the bead of water gets drawn into the paper towel rapidly, then you weren't producing enough sebaceous sweat.
Okay, thank you. The second question, did mention it last week and I didn't copy it down. Proportion of flax, walnut, hemp, olive oils. I remember you gave some percentages.
Yeah, the kit does contain a bottle of the blend, which includes walnut, flaxseed, and extra virgin olive oil in a really beautiful ratio. It's going to be difficult for people to duplicate that. So because I recommend if you weigh less than 200 pounds to take 3 tablespoons of oil, it's just easier to just do 1 tablespoon of each oil. So that will suffice for now, but if you do have the kit, then the blend is ideal. So it's not going to make that big of a difference to have, the ratio not the same as the oil bottle.
In the kit, like the email that you sent me the other day that's got all those links to buy various things, includes one for the Udo's oil, which I do know is a blend. I already have the oils ready to go to do my own blend, so which is why I'm asking the question. But out of curiosity, in your kit, is it the Udo's oil that is provided?
No. In fact,
No.
the kit is not available in certain countries, as I think you already know. So Australia has a huge problem getting in there. Canada has a huge problem getting it in there. But we do have the ability to have it shipped through some other resellers in, like the EU, into the UK, some other countries, but it's just not available. And I can't ship to the other countries. It's the resellers. So I do think, though, however, some people have gotten the kit into Australia, but I can't recall if they were using a third-party shipper. So they'd send it to a place in the United States that would actually forward it. And, I think people have done it that way. But bottom line is I have, I sent you the list of the substitutions that we've used in the past. So that's what you're working off of. But our kit does have the oils that are the blend that are ideal for the protocol.
No worries. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for the question. And by the way, the question that the other person in the Facebook group asked about the ideal niacin dose, I'm sure others are having the similar question. It's a sign that there's not enough understanding of how this protocol works, why the niacin is needed, how it's dosed properly and timed properly. So there's no such thing as an ideal dose. But the niacin flush sauna detox, which is in the category of sauna detoxification using niacin, the niacin flush sauna detox program is something that you don't want to get beyond 500 milligrams because that can trigger rebound, and we don't want to do that unless you're on the protocol. So, but just know that everybody's bodies, their body masses make a difference. Food in the stomach makes a difference. So it's a case of there's no way to say what's an ideal niacin dose. It just means that the person hasn't really fully yet understood how this protocol works and how the niacin is dosed and timed.
Is there an upper limit that you suggest people don't go beyond, like 3.5, 4,000, 4.5? I don't know. Is there an upper limit of don't go beyond?
So because we're up titrating daily on the protocol and body mass makes a difference, the average person who weighs, well, not the average person. Yeah, let's start with the average person. So the average person who weighs less than 200 pounds is going to probably work up to 3,100 milligrams before we start tapering you down. The population who weigh above 200 but less than 300 are going to need more around 200 milligrams a day, and they're going to get up to maybe 5,800 milligrams. And somebody who weighs 300 or more should be doing 300 milligram doses per day, or per day for the up titration. And they can get way up in there. But as far as is there an upper limit? I can tell you that nobody's ever found one. Nobody's ever died from taking niacin, although there's a story of a woman who attempted suicide and all she had was a brand new bottle of niacin. She consumed the whole thing in one sitting, and when the EMTs got to her, they calculated she had taken 250,000 milligrams of niacin in one sitting. Didn't kill her, but basically it probably caused her to have one heck of a twisted stomach. It probably knotted up her stomach, and she was probably writhing in pain, but it was not something that is a lethal dose. Now, I can also tell you that doctors are told not to prescribe more than 500 milligrams because things can get hepatotoxic, which means liver damage, right? Well, in reality, they're talking about the pharmaceutical grades of niacin, which happen to have usually a coating to make them either slow release, sustained release, extended release, or time released. And that coating tends to be phthalates. Yeah, phthalates, the very thing that makes plastic water balls squeezy. So, phthalates and BPAs are endocrine disrupting chemicals. So, yeah, I don't like to, I mean, I can see why they're hepatotoxic. It's a case of they're actually toxic. But the main reason with the slow release niacin is because it does take so much longer for the liver to actually process the niacin. And so we can't even use any of those on our protocol. It has to be immediate release, pure niacin. But anyway, so no high dose. In fact, Dr. Abram Huffer, the now deceased expert on niacin, who was a psychiatrist, he was curing schizophrenia using 20 to 60,000 milligrams of niacin per day, with his patients. And so just know that, when we get up to like 3,100 or 5,800 milligrams, we're not even coming close to what could be considered a high dose, but you would never start at those kind of values. You would always up titrate. And we're doing it on the protocol to overcome the body's built up tolerance to the niacin. That's the way we trigger a rebound every day. So there's so much, science behind why this protocol needs niacin and how the pharmacokinetics of niacin work. And it's fascinating to get really deep into. But the thing is that you have to understand the niacin and its purposes. It does have the flesh does have value, but it's more about rebound lipolysis. So anybody else have any other questions? Anyway, so again, thank you all for joining me, and I will see you all next Tuesday, and we'll just call this a night. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.